Welcome to part 3 of Practical Phishing Assessments. If you have not seen the first video of this course, I encourage you to do so before continuing on to this video. I'll leave a link in the description. Alright, now we're going to test our GoPhish instance to make sure that we can actually successfully send email from it. Now this is super important because it's going to be what you're sending all your phishing emails out of. So to do so, connect to your Amazon EC2 instance and come to the GoPhish directory and run GoPhish as root. So sudo./GoPhish. And then a quick reminder to connect to the GoPhish admin panel. Just put in the name of or the IP address of your EC2 instance and then running on port 3333. And make sure you're connecting via HTTPS. The username is admin and then the password is whatever you had set before. We're going to want to head over to Sending Profiles and click Create New Profile. You can name this whatever you want. In the From field, you're going to want to put the user that you're going to be spoofing. Now we're going to want to open up our credentials.csv file that we downloaded earlier. And we want to copy and paste the SMTP username and the SMTP password into these fields. If you don't remember where to find that, you can come to SMTP settings and it's in this little folder here. Now we need the host. The host is just your server name right up here. Copy that and paste it in there. And then we're going to be running that out of port 465. So do a :465. Now we can go ahead and send a test email to make sure everything is working correctly. So to do that, you can just put whatever you want here. I'm just going to be using 10-minute mail for a quick and easy email. And then go ahead and click send. And it should say email sent, and you might see some information over here pop up in GoPhish. Now once we actually receive that, you'll see it's popped up right here saying it works. So that's the last portion of this that we need to set up for our phishing campaign. Now that all the testing and all the setup is done, we can move into actually executing our campaign. The final portion of GoPhish that we need to configure is the settings that we'll be using for sending out our phishing campaign. Now initially you're going to land on this dashboard when you just come to your GoPhish admin panel. The next one is the campaigns. You actually can't even create a campaign until you fill out all these settings. So go ahead and go over to Users and Groups and click New Group. This is the page where you're actually going to input your emails that you're sending the fish to. Now if you already have a whole big list of emails, you can just download GoPhish's CSV template and put in all your emails in the correct field there. Once you save that, you can import bulk users and import your group template. As you can see, GoPhish automatically put all these users in. Now, one important thing to note is you definitely don't want to send a phish to someone that you're impersonating. So if you're impersonating the system administrator, go ahead and remove them from that list. With that, you can give your group a name. I like to name this live if this is actually the group that I'm sending the phish to. Go ahead and click Save Changes. Now the email template, you'll want to come up here and click New Template. I've already added one in here, and this is highly dependent on who you're phishing. So what I like to do is, if you click this little preview, you can kind of put whatever you want here. It's more of an art form getting people to click your link, but essentially what you're going to do is generate some sense of urgency, and you want them to click on this link without even thinking about it. So if you see down in the bottom, this link actually goes to our Evil Engine X page, the login.microsoft.phishinglnc.com. One pro tip is if you have email correspondence with this company, generally they have an email footer. Just go ahead and copy that and change it to whoever you're impersonating. This tracker down here, don't worry too much about that. That's not going to show up in your actual phish. Instead, that's just going to let GoPhish know when people have clicked on the link, when they've opened it, when they've reported it, and other information like that. And that will actually populate in our campaign dashboard. For the subject line, I like to say urgent, suspicious login. This really depends on what your pretext is, but this suspicious login has worked pretty well for me. Go ahead and save that. Landing pages, it doesn't matter too much what this is. You can create one. We're not actually using a GoFish landing page, but you need one in order to send out your fish. So you can just name this, testing or whatever. It doesn't matter. No users are actually going to see this page, so you can just leave it blank. Next up, we have sending profiles. So the first thing you're going to want to do is give this a name. And then in the From tab, you're going to want to input the user that you're sending email from, so the user that you're spoofing. Now be careful right here. You want to make sure that you're putting in the domain that you own, not the actual domain. I've had an issue in the past where I have accidentally put in the legitimate domain of the company and then my email is never sent. So for the SMTP host, you want to come to your Amazon SES, copy this server name right here, and then we are going to be sending out this fish on port 465. The username is going to be in those credentials that we talked about earlier. So if you don't remember how to get to those, just come to these SMTP settings and you can create your SMTP credentials. I have these right here. And you just need to copy and paste these into your GoFish. And if you want, you can send a test email or you can save the profile. Now with that, that's all you need to do to set up GoFish to send your phishing campaign. So in the next video, I'm actually going to talk you through what happens once you actually hit launch on your campaign. All right, welcome to the portion of the course where all the moving parts we've been configuring and all the infrastructure we've been standing up is actually going to work together to create our phishing campaign. Now to get right into this, you're going to go into your GoFish admin panel and you're going to click New Campaign. And just for everyone's reminder, down here we have our Evil Engine X. So we can see we don't have any sessions right now. Up here on the top right, we have our GoFish server running, and then over here we have our GoFish admin panel. So for the campaign name, I'm just going to name this live. Again, the landing page doesn't matter too much because they're not actually going to be landing on that. They're going to get redirected to our Evil Engine X server. For the URL, just put in your URL that you're running off of right now, but make sure you don't add the port number because you don't want them hitting the GoFish admin panel. For the groups, go ahead and select live. And if you want, you can send these out at certain intervals. I found it best to just send these out all at once. That way you don't have employees talking to each other about, hey, I just got this weird email from our IT administrator. They kind of just all do it at once, and then if they talk about it afterwards, it doesn't matter because you already have their credentials. So you can go ahead and click Launch Campaign. And with that, it says Campaign Scheduled. You'll see GoFish over here has sent out some emails, and it will take us to this nice little email page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video, and once I receive that email, I'm going to show you what it will look like on the victim's end. Alright, so it took just about 30 seconds, but I received the email, and notice that it didn't go into our spam folder. It just went directly into our inbox. And again, it looks like a super legit email. The only thing that you can see is off is this phishinglnc.com instead of obviously Phishing Incorporated. And also if you hover over this link, it gives you the phishing link down the bottom left. However, your average user won't notice that this is anything to be suspicious about. So your average user will just, read this email and be like, oh no, someone's logging into my account from Moscow. They'll click on the link to our Microsoft Security Center, and you'll see down here in Evil Engine X, we actually have some information saying that we have a new visitor. We'll go ahead and sign into our account, And notice up here the link login.microsoft.phishinglnc.com. All right, we'll enter our password real quick. And you can see over here we have successfully captured the username and password. Now to capture the two-factor code, I have this set up on the authenticator on my phone. Go ahead and verify that. And it's good to point out that it doesn't matter what kind of authentication you use. If you use SMS, if you use the Microsoft Authenticator app, if you use the Google one, it doesn't matter. You're still typing in your credentials to a malicious site. It doesn't matter what you click here. And with that, we have successfully signed in. So if we come over here to our Evil Engine X and you type sessions, you can see that on the session 9, we have the username Obi-Wan Kenobi. And we can actually expand that a little bit more by doing sessions and then the ID. So as you can see right here, we have the username, we have the password, and then we also have the session cookie. Now this session cookie is what allows you to bypass two-factor authentication and actually allows you to log in without a username and password. So again, I've showed this off in a previous video, but all you need to do is you need to copy this session cookie, use something such as the cookie editor extension, and come in here and delete all the cookies, import your own, and just paste in this value right here. Now obviously you have to be on the Microsoft website, but that is it. That is a successful phish. We have successfully gotten our username and password and the two-factor code. And with that, all we need to do is wait for more people to click on our link, and we need to write a report and communicate the risk to our client. Once your campaign has concluded, you'll want to come into your Amazon S3 bucket that you set up for receiving email if you chose to do so. And you're going to want to download all of the emails that the employees of your client company have responded with. So generally what you see when employees respond is one of two things. One, they'll respond to your phishing email saying, hey, something sketchy is going on here. Is this really you? Which in that case, there's not too much you can do. And in another instance, if say someone had trouble connecting to your EC2 instance, or for whatever reason their employee account wasn't linked to a Microsoft account, so when they actually tried to put their credentials in, Microsoft said, oh, you don't have an account with us. They might take a screenshot of that and email it to you saying, hey, I tried to put my credentials in, but they didn't work. If that's the case, if this were a real phishing campaign, you still would have gotten their credentials. It doesn't matter that we were using a super complicated proxy where we were actually using a real Microsoft login page. If we weren't using a real Microsoft login page that would have accepted any credentials, then we will have gotten their credentials anyway. So those are the two likely responses you'll get in your S3 bucket. So I like to go ahead and download those and just put them in a zip folder to upload to my client because, like I said, they like to see how their employees are responding. So to do so, it's super simple. All you need to do is come and click on your email that you received and click download. Go ahead and save it, and you'll see that it will just store the file. Now note that there's no extension here. If you want to actually view what the employees said in the email, you can just come in here and rename this and change the extension from nothing to .eml. And then if you open that, it should open in your default mail client. And you can see this was just me testing to see if everything worked. Arguably one of the most important part of any penetration test you'll ever conduct is the report. Now it doesn't matter if you're doing a phishing engagement or an internal pen test, a cloud pen test, a web app pen test. It doesn't matter which type of engagement you're doing. The quality of your report is what matters the most. If 0 people click on your phish and you have a good report, that's still a successful engagement in my opinion. If 100% of the people at the company click on your phishing email and put in credentials, but you don't report on it well, then there's no point in actually doing the phishing assessment. The main purpose of any penetration test is to communicate risk to your client. If you're not communicating risk to your client, then there's no point in having a penetration test. There's no point in what you spend maybe a week or 2 weeks on. So make sure that whenever you do a phishing assessment, you're communicating, hey, 3% of your users clicked on our phishing link. Here's why that's bad. Here's how you can fix it. Now, a gray area when writing reports is blurring usernames. Now, I've seen a few people talk about this, and it's split 50-50. Do you blur the usernames of people who have clicked on your phishing link and put in credentials? Or do you tell the company, hey, Joe Schmo from HR clicked on our phish and put in their credentials? Typically what I do is if it's someone who's going to be on the call when we're going over our report, I'll blur their usernames, because at that point it will definitely feel like to the person that they're being called out, and they might get defensive, and you might lose future work for them, or they might not take the report seriously because it makes them look bad. Now, there's always the question of what do you do if there's either a high percentage of users who have clicked the phishing link and put in their credentials, and what do you do if no one clicks on the link? So the first thing I like to communicate to a client is no matter how many people clicked on the link, the risk is always there. That's what's so scary about phishing, is it's not overly difficult to send a successful phish. It's just a matter of time. A phishing engagement is typically limited to a week or two, but an attacker who really wants to get in will probably get in through a phishing email if they have enough time and enough money and enough patience. So I always like to recommend, no matter how many people actually click the link, I always recommend user awareness training, whether that's through a company or that's just through their IT team talking to employees saying, hey, there's this type of attack out there called phishing. Here's what to look for. I always like to recommend that because that's the best line of defense against phishing. Next, I also like to talk to clients about doing assumed breach pen testing. And what that is basically a pen test assuming that someone has clicked a phishing email. So say 3 people click a phishing email. Give me 3 accounts of those access levels. So say a low, medium, and high level user clicked my phishing email. Give me the account access that those 3 people would have, and assume I've gotten into their computer, or I've gotten their credentials, or I've gotten their VPN login. That will give you a better idea of how someone that has an attacker mindset would actually think about getting into your network and what they would actually do once they were inside. After you're done conducting your phishing campaign, it's really important to deprovision all the infrastructure that you've set up so that you can receive email on your domain. Now, you want to do this for a couple reasons. One, you don't want to receive any emails by accident. Say someone has an IT issue and they're trying to email the IT administrator, but you recently sent them a phish, so when they type their IT administrator's name and just press enter, the first email that comes up in their email client is your phished or your spoofed email. Obviously, you don't want that happening. You don't want to actually cause issues at a company that you're phishing. So what I like to do is a couple of things. One, I like to offer to transfer this domain to our client whenever we're done. So if our client was Phishing Incorporated, when we were done with our phishing campaign, I would just say, hey, after 2 months or 60 days, you're able to transfer a domain. I will just send you this domain once that 2-month period is up. And that 2-month period isn't specific to AWS. That's just any domain, no matter what domain registrar you're using, you're going to have that limitation. So sending that domain to them, it's not so much that it will be helpful to them, but you don't want to have any issues in the future with people accidentally sending you email. Also, if they have the domain, that means other people can't register domains on this site. So say in 5 years, if an attacker comes along, they can also schedule this same phishinglnc.com. So transfer the domain if they want it. If not, you can just delete all the DNS records and let it expire after a year. The next thing, super simple, just take down your EC2 instance that hosted your malicious site. That's super easy. All you have to do is come to your EC2 panel and come to click on the EC2 instance that you've created and just click Stop Instance, and that will deprovision it. You might have heard about a honeypot, and a honeypot is essentially just a fake network that is used to lure in attackers to see how they're acting and what they're doing in a real environment, or what they think is a real environment. A honey user is essentially the same thing. Basically, a honey user is just a fake username or email that you put on your website or LinkedIn or wherever an attacker would look for emails, and you monitor that inbox. So if that inbox starts getting emails saying, hey, you have a suspicious login from Moscow, you can quickly alert on the domain sending that email, and you can blacklist that so no one else in your company gets an email from that domain. You can take this a step further and do a soft block to where that email will go through, but it will automatically get sent to spam folders. That way, if an attacker sees, hey, none of my emails are getting through, they might just buy another domain and try again. So you don't really want to play whack-a-mole with this. You kind of want to run your attacker out of time and energy and money with just soft blocking them so they don't actually know that their email isn't getting through. So how can you do this? In one of the previous videos, we talked about generating a targets list using open source intelligence. So the first thing that I do as an attacker is I come to the company's website. So say this is your company's website and you have a list of employees on your website with their first name and last name. What you could do, and this would throw someone like me off, is if you create a user named Elliot Alderson or insert generic name here, and you say this guy works here, you make it look like a real employee. You also go to LinkedIn and create a fake user with the same name that works at your company. Now you can monitor that inbox. And anytime that person gets an email in their inbox and it's not from LinkedIn, then you know that someone has gone through and scraped LinkedIn or scraped your website and might be trying to do something malicious on your domain. I want to go over domain name monitoring and what it is and what it isn't. So domain name monitoring will allow you to essentially monitor for domains that are created that are very similar to yours. Now, this is super easy to do. You can typically just run a whois command and check to see if a domain exists, but it might be a little bit more helpful if we could know when that domain was created. So I've created a quick tool called SpoofPoint that will allow you to do just that. Now, this isn't a super advanced tool that took me, months and months to create. I created this in about an hour. And all it does is it issues a whois command on an input list. So I will show you that input list right now. So say my domain is grahamhelton.com. This is my real domain. In practice, you wouldn't put your domain in here, but this is just an example. And then I also put some domains in here that I'm worried about. So I'm worried about someone buying grahamhelton.com, but the one right here looks very similar to an L. Say I'm worried about someone buying grahamhelton.com where the O is a 0. And then maybe I'm worried about a common misspelling of my name being bought up and used for malicious purposes. And then I also have a random website in here that I'll use for example purposes. So all you have to do to run this is you can just download it from GitHub and type /spoofpoint -i for an input list and then your input list name. All right, and then this will run super quickly. And just like that, it's already done. So what happened? So essentially, it takes the first item in the list and issues a whois command. If that exists, it shows up in red. It gives you some information about this domain. So if an attacker had registered this domain, you could see when it was registered, who it was registered with, all these different things that could be useful. And then it will also tell you if this domain has MX records set up. And if they have MX records set up, that means they're ready to send email, which means you could be getting phished from that domain. So you can see no one has bought these domains, which means it's not a valid domain, which is good for you. And then this is just an example. So this domain is someone owns this domain, but it doesn't have an Amex record set up, so right now no one can send a phishing email from this. Now this can very quickly change, but it should be noted that no one can send email from this domain right now. So that's essentially what domain monitoring is. I do want to give props to some other tools that are out there, such as DNS Twist. This is much more complicated and will essentially create a bunch of different permutations of your domain. So instead of having a list of domains that you're worried about, this tool will actually use Python and generate all kinds of different permutations that can be used for domain monitoring. So this is a little bit more heavy. This tool I've created is a little bit more lightweight. It's not very hard to do. You can download this, or you could simply run a whois lookup on any of the domains that you are worried about. This course wouldn't be complete without giving a brief mention of user awareness training. Now, the reason I'm only going to talk about this very briefly is this is the number one thing that everyone knows that they should be doing, hopefully. User awareness training is just training your users not to click on phishing links. And while I think that that's good, I think it's much easier said than done. Personally, I've conducted phishing engagements, and I'm still always terrified that I'm accidentally going to click on a phishing link. So you can imagine how terrifying it would be for a normal user who might not even know what phishing really is. They just know they're not supposed to click on sketchy links. So I think that user awareness training is great and everyone should be doing it, and I think that there's ways that the industry can be better about this, but I also think that this is the first line of defense, but it shouldn't be your only line of defense. From a red team perspective, it doesn't matter how many people are clicking on my phishing links as long as one single person clicks that link. It doesn't matter if 10% of the employees are clicking it or 15%. As long as I have one username and password I can use to log in, it doesn't matter. I have access to your network. Now, with that being said, I also think it's important that you shouldn't beat a dead horse. I've seen companies that send phishing emails out every quarter, and their employees get to the point where they don't even care about phishing anymore. They know that they're just going to accidentally click the link, and then they're going to have to go through the phishing training. At that point, you're doing more harm than good by sending out all these phishing emails. So I think that as an industry, we need to get better about teaching our users why we shouldn't be clicking on these sketchy links instead of just telling them not to click on sketchy links when they're trying to get their work done.